Hello everyone, Grandpa Jake here from Funtime Grandpa. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different, and I'm actually going to replace some bearings in my Phantom 2 stock motors, and what I'm going to be putting in are the Boca ABEC 5 ceramic bearings. And I'm doing this for a couple reasons. There's been failures in general on certain bearings. I want to put a ceramic bearing in because, first of all, ceramic's going to hold up much longer. It's lighter, less friction, and these come, and I'm going to put, make sure you check down in the description, I'm going to put links to this kit, which comes with 8 bearings, and I'll also show you a link for the individual bearings should you need to just replace 1 or 2 and don't want to go through the whole process. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how quickly to take the Phantom apart, and you don't need too many tools to do this. You just need some patience, and you have to be careful, but it's very easy if you don't try to rush. You're going to need some sort of Allen wrench. A 2mm is what will work. They do supply one, I believe, in the Phantom when it comes to you. I use an extension. It makes it easier getting the screws that are in towards the fuselage. And also you're going to need a 3mm or somewhat of a small screwdriver for the end screws at the ends of each of the extensions here. There's a little screw, and you got to be careful, because if you don't get a nice grip on it and push it in there tight, it's going to end up stripping, and ultimately you're going to end up with a ruined screw. So you don't want to do that. And I have my grandchild's little hammer, and that's just going to be to help tap out the bearing. And what I did here is I actually took a little screwdriver with an extension, and I ground it down. You can use whatever you want. I made it flat, so when I come through the inside to tap the bottom bearing out, you want to tap it lightly, flip over to the other side, tap it lightly. And you need something that's going to first make it through the bearing, secondly have a little room, and then be able to angle off on each side of the bearing. So you need one of those. And that's about all you're going to need at this point in time. But let me just talk a little bit about the Boca bearing. I got a nice little mouse pad here with all the different bearings that are made, and the different sizes. And what I liked about the Boca, first, they've been around a long time. I used to rollerblade. I've used them in my rollerblades, and the ABEC 5 is a very high quality bearing. I had tried some lower end bearings, thought I got a deal on them, ended up some made it on the shaft, some wouldn't go on the shaft. There were no consistencies to it. These Boca bearings are going to be just perfect, and it's what you need. And I questioned about oiling versus greasing, and from what I read, you can get these with grease or without. To be honest, I don't know which these are. It doesn't matter to me. Grease is fine, because once it warms up, which won't take long at the speed that these motors turn, it's going to loosen up, and it's going to give it good protection. And you're not flying in a lot of dust. Most people aren't. So it's not like worrying about it with a rollerblade. There I went with a greaseless bearing, and I would put a little oil in. A lot of maintenance on rollerblades. But on these it shouldn't be too bad at all. But I asked about oil, and a lot of pluses, minuses to what people say, and some people say yes, some people say no. I say yes. And what they recommend, and they make a high-speed oil, it's called Lightning Lube. It's designed for the brushless motors, the high-speed motors, and put about a drop on each of the bearings maybe once a month, and that will keep them running really well. It'll keep some of the friction down. Ceramic bearings theoretically could be run without any oil, but put a little in. It will extend the life. Friction's friction, and I think you'll be fine if you get a tube of that. So let's go forward here, and basically I'm going to just flip it upside down. Make sure you have your battery out, depending which one you have, just for safety. And let's put it right here. Let's get some of these out. I'm going to speed through a lot of this, so you're going to see me here, and then pretty soon you'll be seeing me with it apart. So right now, basically, I take out those little end screws. Those are the most fragile. Put them in a place you're not going to lose them. there's 4 of those. If you just take your time, you're not going to have a problem. If you try to rush or try to bend something, you may have some issues. Then when it comes to these, well, I've got a little bit wider skids on mine, so actually it makes it easy to take the inner bearings out, or the inner screws out. And you can either loosen them all up, tip it over upside down, and hope you don't lose any, or you can take them out one at a time. I've got some extras, so it won't be critical, and I would find them on the floor if they did fall. So there's 4 on the inside. Don't forget to take those out. And if ever you have a problem with where they're not coming out, say you've taken the outside ones first, just sort of squeeze it together and it will come right out. Okay, those are out. I'm going to flip them out just so I can catch 4 of them. Okay. Alright, now coming back to the ends, you've got basically 4 motor screws, and you've got 2 screws just before that holding the housing together. Take out all but one of the screws for the motor. And of course the 2 screws that are just before that. See, now this is coming apart a little bit, so I'll hold it together so it comes out real nice. And again, I'm going to take out all but one outside one. It'll make it easier when it comes to pulling the motor out. Don't mix up these screws. You definitely don't want to put a long one by some chance in the part where the motor is. That's just a note that I'll make, is when you come to ever putting prop guards on here, they're going to give you a longer screw, and that's fine because it mounts fine. But if ever you take off your prop guards, do not use the long screw. You'll put it right into the motor, and I guarantee you will end up frying the motor. So don't do that. Go to the next one. And feel free to fast forward through all this if you don't want to watch it. But this is for people that have never had it apart, or for people that are uncertain exactly what to do. Some of us don't need any of this help. And you can just fast forward to the end if you want. But I want to make it easy for the beginner. Sometimes people forget that, you know, there are people that have never done this before that want to learn, and the last thing they want to do is do it wrong. I like this better than the Allen wrench because it gives me a little more speed and a little more flexibility on getting the Allen end into the screws. If everything's stock on your Phantom, you really won't go wrong on the screws, because the long screw is the motor screw. And first, you'll know the difference, but you can't really hurt the motor even if you did something wrong, because the little screws will not even reach into the motor. Of course, your motors would probably fly out at that point, but okay, we're all done except for, oh, I forgot 2 screws. That would have been a problem. That should do it. Let's get them all out here. There's one left in there, but hopefully it'll come out. There it is. Okay, then depending, you got the Phantom 1 or Phantom 2, you can either let the top hang over, or you can take it off. The Phantom 2 is nice because there's only one connector. Put that aside. you really can't go wrong putting it back together if you look where your tape goes over and match it up with where the tape goes on the lower end of the extensions, and you won't go wrong. Because there is a compass in there, I'm sorry, the GPS in there, and you don't want to put that in wrong. Alright, now we're down to the motors. And basically, let's just do one here right now. I'm going to do the one, well, let's see. Let's do this one here. Let's see which screw I have left in there. Okay, it's the one closest to me. Once you do that, your motor is going to be free. And that's it. Your motor is out. Now, I did make a mistake. You're going to need one more tool here. You're going to need a very thin blade screwdriver, that's a flat screwdriver, to take off the little clips here. And I'm going to put you on hold for a minute and go get that, because without it, we can't go further. Okay, I've got a small blade screwdriver, and I do have a pair of needle nose, because when it comes to putting the clip back on, you need to very carefully get to the center of the clip and snap it in, just so that it's definitely seated and doesn't come flying out. So how I do this is I always keep my thumb this way. I put the screwdriver in one part of the C-clip here, and I basically, they do make a tool to take these off. Most people don't have it handy. I actually have one from another copter that I have, but I wanted to show you how to do it with basic tools most people have. So don't lose these. If you do, you're going to have to go up to the hobby store and find a couple of them, because when they fly, they fly. And then you've got a little bearing, I'm sorry, a little, well, not a bearing, a little spacer. It's, I don't know if you can see it in there or not. It's a little brass spacer. Make sure you put that aside. And I would recommend doing only one motor at a time. And then your motor is going to come apart. And that's a strong magnet, so it pulls apart. Keep that away from everything. Put that off to the side. People have wondered about the balancing of the Phantom motors, and what they do, I have a nice balancer. So my thought was I was going to take and balance these motors so they would work better with the props, but if you look inside, you're going to see a little, I'm guessing it's some type of epoxy. They actually balance these so that it is a very, very smooth running motor. And I actually did some vibration tests and sound tests, which I'm going to do a comparison later. You really don't need to know for this this project, but for me, I wanted to see some differences and check differences between bearings, motors, and so on. But either way, they do a pretty good job of taking care of those motors, so they run pretty smooth. Now, the hard part, and it can be hard and it can be easy, is you need to go in. You've got your bottom bearing here. That's when you need to probably pop out first, and you just bring it off to the side a little bit, and I hold it in the palm of my hand and I give it a little tap. It's angled, if you can see that it's angled. Then I move it over to the other side. And sometimes you need a pretty good tap, but if you work on them little by little, they will pop out. Now it's starting to come out, and you got to do from side to side. If you try to just hit one side, it's going to jam it. It's almost there, so a little more tapping. Okay, as you can see, it's almost out. One more tap and it's going to pop out. Okay, and that's it. And there's the old bearing. Actually, it's not very old because this has probably only flown maybe 10-20 times, somewhere in there. But I like to do a lot of preventive maintenance, because I don't want to wait till a bearing seizes up and then I have a problem where I have to depend on my little GPS tracker to find my copter that crashed and probably is somewhat ruined. So a small investment of a bearing. I even did these on my AR drones because they just used a bushing, and I bought, you know, some small bearings, and it lasts a lot longer that way, and it does run smoother by far. So you take that one out. Now the other one you can actually do the same way, or you could get a little bit bigger shaft and just tap straight down, but I'll just do one this way just to show you how I'm doing it. And that one popped almost directly out, so let's tap it a little bit more. Yeah, that one's coming out pretty good. You go to the side that's still down and just work your way back and forth like I did with the other one. There we go. And that's it. So now I've got both bearings out. My motors, they haven't been used much. They're very clean. Be careful you don't scratch up any of the copper wiring, and just be gentle. But if you see, basically what I did when I went in, instead of trying to jam it down on one side, because they are so tight fitting that if you try to do that, it actually becomes a wedge and you're going to end up scratching or ruining something. Tap a little, and it will finally pop right out, and it doesn't take much effort. Now, I'm only going to do the one motor for you just so you can see, but basically I'm going to go and do all of them, and then I'll come back and show you how I did this. But take one of your bearings out, don't mix them up, take one out at a time so you don't end up by some chance putting in the wrong bearing. I don't know if you could tell the difference or not. Oh yeah, you can. I mean, just the quality of them. Definitely. The Boca's got it. So what you want to do is just put it in. I don't really think it matters which way it goes in. I like to keep, if there's a shield, I like to keep that to the outside, but they look fine here. So basically, once you get it here, I take something that's, again, see now it's jamming a little bit because I put it in crooked. You really want to go in very straight with it. Now let's bring the other bearing out, and let me look one more time at it, make sure I don't see a inside-outside. This side, it looks a little bit higher on this end, so I'm going to assume that that's got a little more of dust protection, but I don't really think it makes a difference. And okay, let me go get, I'm going to go get something to press this in that will not scratch the copper, so I'll be right back in one moment. Okay, sorry about the delay there. I had to go and check on a couple things, and what I'm going to show you a couple ways to get these bearings in. The flush side with the bottom of the motor, that is a little bit easier because you don't have to worry about the copper wires here, because you don't want to scratch them or damage them. So what I usually do is on the bottom, you know, I will take something soft or somewhat semi-soft, like this end of the screwdriver. It's very hard rubber, and basically I'm going to put it onto the side of the bearing here and get it centered, and you push it in. If by some chance, let me go and do the front side first, the top side, and we'll do the same thing. Again, it's important to try to get it to go in very, very even. If it cocks a little bit, it will wedge, and then you'll have a heck of a time. So let's just push this in a little bit better. Okay, now let me show you a little trick. If by some chance it's not going in and going flush, because if it doesn't go flush, what's going to happen is you're going to put your little brass spacer on there, and you're not going to have room for your C-clips. So you want to make sure that you get that seated completely in, or it will not go together properly. So what I can do, or you can do, your tool, if you have something similar to this, basically what I do is I take the old bearing, I set it on top, and then I put the screwdriver right through the center, because sometimes bearings are tough to get in if it doesn't go in perfect, and some go in so easy you can just use your fingertips. But if you center it, literally center it, put it in the palm of your hand or against something, and especially for the brass or the copper wires, I like to keep in my hand because I'm not going to damage it with my skin. And basically line up the bearing with the other bearing, and this shaft is going through it, so it's not going to hurt anything there, but this part here will push on the bearing. Take another one, and you won't damage the bearing because the center and the outside are pushing on the exact spots you need to. And again, when I tell you light, very, very gentle, light taps. You don't want to damage the bearing, or it's a waste to do this. Just very gentle. If you have to tap it, which hopefully you won't, and then what you want to do is put your motor back together. Look, make sure that's seated, that's nice and flush, and it should be good to go. You could, well, let me show you this first. Just put that in straight and don't let it slam in. Hold some resistance in here so you don't damage anything. Well, it pulled it in anyhow, but it was going in straight. Then you want to take your little brass spacer. You need that. If you lose it, you're going to have to go and get one of those. And here's where you have to be careful, because these things fly. So don't go doing it in a garage with a dirty floor, because in case you do lose it, you will not have an easy time trying to find it. You want to get the first part of it. Once you get in the groove a little bit, just rest it on the brass connector, and once it's on it, now we should be good to snap it on. No, it's still not perfect yet because it's on only half of the spacer. You want to get it completely resting on top. Finger dexterity is important on this one. Or you can go buy a tool. That makes it a little bit easier to do, but I wanted to show it with basic stuff. Now it's actually in the groove, and this is where you have to be very careful. Right a dead center on that clip, and keep your finger here because it's going to stop it from flying, because it's going to try to shoot back the way it's going on. I take and gently rest the tip of the needle nose here, right dead center on the C-clip, and gently squeeze. Now it looks like it's in, but it isn't perfect yet. You want to make sure that it's a solid snap inside that groove all the way around. Otherwise you will have a problem. And the clip should run nice and smooth around it. You should be able to spin the clip a little bit. If it's spinning, it's probably seated, and that's good to go. That looks as good as it gets. So once you have that completed, just reassemble. If your wires are twisted, make sure how you put it on. It's not going to stop it from running. Just put it on the most comfortable way to keep the wires the least tangled. You could put it on this way, but I'm going to probably one twist that way. I think that's the best. And then take one of your screws, put it on your wrench, put the screw up through the bottom, and snug it down a little bit. Then you can go ahead and you can put your other screws in. Don't crank them down to the point that you strip anything or you crack your plastic. They should be snug, but you don't have to put a lot of power on them. And you can check it every so many flights to make sure that they're not coming loose. But get a feel for it. Or before you take it apart, sort of feel how tight they are, how much pressure you have to put on it to tighten them. And then keep that in the back of your mind so you don't break it. Because if you do end up breaking the little plastic under there, you're going to eventually get all these stress cracks. Then you're going to either be getting a whole new frame or putting epoxy in there, and you want to do, the least amount of damage and basically no damage if at all possible when you do work on your your quadcopter, because they are a very, very technically advanced piece of equipment. And if anything is off, any balance is off, anything isn't right on all four motors, one of two things are going to happen. It's either going to have a problem and crash, or it's going to stress the other motors to try to keep it stable. You want everything to run as even as possible. And as I go along, I don't need to show you how to put it back together. It's very simple. You just put your cover on. Just again, make sure if you did take off any connectors that you get them in the proper way. You really can't put this in wrong. There's little keys on there, and on a Phantom 1 you probably didn't take it completely off because you'd have to disconnect a few more things. But one thing I will mention, when you're all said and done, seeing you're going to this bother to put these wonderful bearings in, is that you get your props as balanced as possible. And let me just show you one thing real quick. Let me just get one of the props here. And this, I think people forget. When you, let's see which one this is. When you've got your props completely balanced out, you got to also remember they can be balanced, but the tips could be off. One tip could be up here, one tip could be down here. They're still going to look balanced from the center, and you think you've got a great prop, and that thing is going like this. And you can tell if it's on a couple ways. Bring it up to about eye level while you're flying, and those tips should be literally as thin as that. It shouldn't look like a thick tip. It should just be right as thin as the tip is now. And the other way to do it is once you have your housing on, and let me show you this, because I think it's important if you're going to this this extent to put nice bearings in. You want to just set on top for now, and I'll show you how I do it. I take something to measure with. Actually, I use a little ruler, and let me just show you. I think it'd be worth the time to do this. I take, and basically I have a mark right here on mine. I set it right to where the tip, basically, if you can see, the tip just nicks the end of a ruler, or you could use a piece of cardboard, anything, as long as it's consistent. And then when you bring the other one around, it should be in the exact same spot. The exact front and back of the prop tip should touch the exact same spot that your front one did. Now, okay, you got to know if you've got a straight prop, because what if I'm balancing it to this? You have to take an average. In other words, get a couple props, see where they all touch, see which one is the most consistent point. That is probably the factory perfect spot. And then from that point, you can move all of them. So say, for example, this one's up. Just, I grab very gently from here. You can warm it up if you want with a blow dryer, but just put a little pressure down and just slowly, just keep it there for about a half a minute, and until all the props are even. You will be surprised at how little vibration you get, whether you have a gimbal, you have some type of absorption for the shakiness. If you look back at some of my videos, you see zero shaking. And it isn't just that the gimbal is a wonderful gimbal on this model because it's the 3-axis gimbal. I get no shaking. I'll put my phone, my smartphone here, and I run a program that checks for vibration. Virtually nothing. I mean, it's so little that it means nothing to worry about. But if these props tips are off, let me tell you, it will quadruple the amount of vibration you get. So anyhow, let's end at this point. If you need more help or you need me to go more into detail, I can try to do a little bit differently for you. At the end of this, I am going to put a drop of the Boca lightning lube on there, and it's pretty neat. They've got a syringe, and all you do is, if you see it here, there's a little washer. All you do is you turn it until the washer matches the tip, and then you just put one drop on the top bearing, one drop on the bottom bearing, and do that, of course, before you get it all together, because you can't really reach the bottom bearing. Some people have drilled a little hole there, which you can if you feel comfortable, or you'll have to pull it apart. and some people have opened it up and put a little rubber spacer in there so that they can pop it out but no dust will get in it. Either way, it'd be a really good idea to put a drop of oil on that so that you don't have to get yourself into where you're causing stress on the motors. So look at the links that I'm going to put on there. Boca is my bearing of choice. I think that they put a lot of quality into it. You can go get some, off-the-shelf bearings. I have some here to show you, and I should have showed you how just putting it on the motor shaft, these slid on perfect, no stress at all. Out of about 24 bearings that I got sitting over there, only 8 of them fit on the shaft, and they were tight. And the other ones, let me tell you, if you'd have put it on, you'd have never gotten the motor together, and you'd never gotten that bearing off. So be very careful where you buy your bearings. You've already spent, hundreds or up into the thousands on your equipment. Don't let the difference between a $1, $2 bearing or an $8 bearing stop you. It's worth the money. It's worth buying the quality. I'm just saying that from experience. You basically get what you pay for, and if somebody's selling them cheap, there's a reason for that. Just buy good quality, and Boca's going to stand behind it. They have, I believe, a 100% guarantee on them. And look at my links. Look at the oil I'm using, and let me know if you've done this and what your thoughts are when it's all done. So for now, I just want to wish everybody a wonderful day, and I'm going to continue doing the other 3 motors, put them together, and I am going to do a little vibration test after just to see if there is any difference. I didn't have much before, but I know that these bearings are going to hold up. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and thanks for visiting. Bye-bye now.